In 2014, a crack toy fixer was banished from the forums for talking about repairing vintage toys. Undeterred, this man promptly set up his own YouTube channel located in the Somerset Underground. Today, still wanted by hardcore Star Wars collectors, he survives as a maverick toy restorer. If you have a problem, if no one else can help, and if you can find him, maybe toy-polloi can help you. Welcome to toy-polloi. No Legos were harmed in the making of this video.
Hello and welcome to another video from toy-polloi. Now, over the last few years I've been showing you how to make replacement vintage vinyl capes for the various Star Wars figures in the line that came with the vinyl capes. And one thing that I've always wanted to do, and something that I've never actually sort of got around to, is to make a pauldron for a vintage Kenner Star Wars Stormtrooper, because although it's nice to have a big army of Stormtroopers, they do tend to look all the same. And one thing you do see in the Star Wars movies is that the sort of commanders have pauldrons on their shoulders. Now, I've seen online that there are a few people making sort of custom figures with pauldrons, and they all tend to do it by sculpting something onto a Stormtrooper and adding something permanently to a figure. And I just don't think that is how Kenner would have done it in the day. If you look at the other figures in the line at the time, they all came with vinyl capes. So we got a few here just to show you. Here's a Bespin Lando with his cape, and obviously we have Darth Vader with his vinyl cape, and Obi-Wan again with a vinyl cape, and there are many others in the first two waves of Star Wars figures that have vinyl capes. So I just don't think that Kenner would have gone to the effort of sculpting a new figure. What they would have done is made a vinyl little pauldron that fitted over the head of an original Stormtrooper figure and made it look something like the pauldrons that you see in Star Wars. So today I'm going to show you how I've made these new custom vinyl pauldrons to fit on your Stormtroopers to make them look really pretty darn cool. So let's quickly take a look at one that I've made just so you can see what it looks like. As you can see, it's a small piece of vinyl with another bit of vinyl stuck onto it, and this fits very neatly over the head of a Stormtrooper. So it's something you can easily add to your figures and remove it. And this is a design of my own making, so I don't think there's anyone else out there making something like this. So let's get started, and I'll show you what you need to do to make your own pauldrons. So here is the pattern that I've designed to make these pauldrons. Now, this was a little bit of a trial and error design. I had to make a few first before I got one that was the exact size. You can see here on the side, this is one of my test ones, which is actually slightly larger, but this is the sort of final size that I have worked out. Now, there are a few different bits you need to see on this printing, and you're going to need to print it out a few times, because the overall shape is what we've got to cut out of some black vinyl, and then the darker grey area is what we need to cut out of some coloured vinyl to add the sort of flashings to one side of it. So on this printout here, I've stuck some double-sided tape on the back of it, and we'll use this to sort of hold it in place on the vinyl and stop it moving around. And now that's stuck in place, we can just cut this out. I'm just going to use a pair of scissors, and you'll see there is a grey line running around the whole edge of the pattern. You actually need to cut that grey line off, so you're just left with the white inner area and the grey section at the bottom, which is the shape of the sort of coloured area. So we're going to cut this out very carefully. There we go, so that's the outside bit cut off. Now we need to cut the inner area, and for that I'm going to use a knife, and again we've got to cut the sort of grey circle out, so we're just left with a hole in the middle without any sort of grey around the edge of it. And this is easier to do with a knife because you've got to go around some tight corners, and cutting this with scissors is just not practical. So here is the shape cut out. Now we can take the backing off, which is the double-sided tape, and you're going to want to sort of reduce the amount of stickiness on this tape, because it's going to be really too strong to stick onto some vinyl. So I'm just going to stick this onto my trousers a few times just to help remove some of the stickiness and make it so that it just about holds on, which is all you really need at this point. Now for the vinyl, I'm going to use some black vinyl from a blow-up toy. If you've watched any of my previous videos, you'll have seen me use lots of different sort of blow-up beach toys to get vinyl from, and this is the same toy that I used to make Darth Vader's cape. So this was actually a blow-up killer whale, and really you only need a small amount of this just to sort of, as you can see, make that. It's quite a tiny shape. So I'm going to stick this, now that it's got some of its stick removed from it, I'm going to stick this onto this piece of vinyl, and we can now, once that's stuck in place, cut this out, and we'll have the basic pauldron shape. And again, to cut the middle section out, I'm just going to use a knife and carefully cut around. And this is the hole where the head of the Stormtrooper pokes through. And there we have the hole cut out. So that is the basic shape for the Pauldron. You can see that is what fits over the Stormtrooper's head. So now we can go about adding the coloured patch to the top of this. For the coloured patch, you're going to need to cut out the grey area of the pattern, as you can see here on the one that's still stuck on the black vinyl. And this is what we're going to use as the shape to make the bit of vinyl to stick over the top of the Pauldron. So here I have another piece of vinyl. This is some white vinyl, and this was the stuff that I used for making the vintage Snowtrooper capes. And we're just going to hold this in place on here. You don't actually need to stick this one because it's such a small piece. And we can then just get a pencil and draw around it and use that as our guide. You could, if you wanted, to do some double-sided tape, but I find it easier to draw this because we actually need to stick some double-sided tape on the other side of this, and the double-sided tape just makes it a little bit awkward to do that second part. So there you go, I've just drawn around that and you can see the pattern drawn on there. I've actually missed one line. Let's just go back. Luckily this is easy to sort of replace. There you go. So there's the lines drawn on, you can just about see that. And on the back of this we're going to stick another piece of double-sided tape because this is what we use to hold it onto the top part of the Pauldron. So if I turn this over, I should be able to still just about see the lines on the other side, and I can stick the double-sided tape exactly where I've drawn that. And now I can cut this section out, again just with a pair of scissors, but this will now have the tape on the other side. Just follow the lines that you've drawn. And there we go. There is the coloured patch to go on the Pauldron. Now we can stick these two pieces together. So here's the black piece and the white piece, and as you can see, one sits on top of the other. If some of your cutting out is not sort of quite accurate enough, at this point you can go and sort of change it slightly and do a bit of fine editing, but that actually doesn't look too bad. That sort of lines up quite nicely. So I'm going to take the backing off the tape on the white vinyl, if I can get that to unstick. Sometimes a bit fiddly, so a knife is often the best way to get these to separate. There we go. And I can now line this up onto the top section, which I think something like that should look good. So you can see there's a slight bit of an error where my two bits haven't lined up, but that's no problem because at this stage we can now just carefully trim around, and you can see that that's now stuck on pretty well. So on the back of this is still the pattern, and that's what we now have to remove. And hopefully, because we've reduced the stickiness of the double-sided tape that we put that pattern on with, we should be able to again just put a little knife through. I'm hoping should be able to unpeel this. It does help if you've got some fingernails. There we go. Once you've got it started, you can now remove the pattern. And it doesn't matter if it rips because this has done its job. And there we have one Pauldron for a Stormtrooper. So let's try this on the figure and see how it looks. Let's grab a Stormtrooper. So here's just a normal Kenner Stormtrooper, and we can just push this Pauldron over the head, and it will have a little bit of stretch to it, which is what you need because you want it to sort of grip onto the body, and that's what holds it in place. And there you go. there is one pauldron for a vintage Kenner Stormtrooper, and that looks pretty nice. I was thinking with maybe making it a little bit smaller, but I actually quite like the fact that it's a little bit large. And looking at some photographs of the original costumes, the pauldrons actually do sort of hang out quite large over the side of the shoulder, so it does look sort of quite in keeping. And I think making this out of vinyl keeps it a lot more in keeping with the original sort of way that the Kenner factories would have produced these figures. A plastic sort of pauldron just doesn't sound like it's the sort of thing that they would do. And as there are plenty of other figures in the line that have vinyl sort of capes and bits added to them, I think this is actually how Kenner would have done it back in the day. And I think it does make quite a big difference to the figures, especially if you're an army builder like me. I have quite a lot of Stormtroopers, and after a while they do tend to all look the same. So just the simple addition of this vinyl pauldron to the figures means that you can have little sort of garrisons and separate them by colour, and it's something that really does sort of add an extra layer to your army building. So as I say, the pattern for this pauldron is going to be available on toy-polloi.com, and I hope this video has been of interest to you, and thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching toy-polloi. Subscribe for more great videos. You can also follow toy-polloi on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.